Welcome to the Resolve Algorithmic Thinking materials. This is a video to show you how to perform a local installation of a Jupyter notebook environment on macOS X. Now you may be aware that there are two different versions of how you can run the algorithmic thinking notebooks. Let me quickly run you through that. There is the option to run them on a web server on Microsoft Azure, so a cloud-based version that requires no installation whatsoever, just getting an account on that cloud server. So that runs out of the box on any platform, in any web browser. And there's a separate video for how to use that. The alternative is you can do a local installation on your individual computer, and that is much faster and doesn't require an internet connection. This is really aimed at the IT administrators of the schools, or maybe teachers who are familiar with installations, and not at the end user. So if you're a student, you should probably normally not be seeing this unless you want to do it at home. Again, remember, if you have difficulties with the installation, there's always the cloud version for which there's a separate introductory video. Okay, so let's get going. You may have noticed there's also a written set of instructions that is essentially the same or exactly the same as what we're doing here in the video. So you may want to have the printed notes alongside what we're doing for further help. The next step is to install Anaconda, our Jupyter Notebook environment. So we open a web browser. I'll take Chrome because I have to use it later anyway, but you could take any web browser really. We go to www.continuum.io downloads. And we have to pick a particular distribution, so obviously we want the Mac distribution, so we find that by scrolling a little bit further down, Anaconda 500 for macOS, and we want the Python 3.6 version. Please make sure to use the Python 3.6 version and not the 2.7 that you see on the right hand side. It won't work. So we download this. We may not want the starter guide, or you may want the starter guide, in which case you enter your email there. Now, as you see down here, this is a fairly big package. Depending on your network connection, mine is particularly bad today. This may take a while. Normally it should only take 1 to 2 minutes. So we wait until this is finished. So meanwhile this is finished, and again I can go to my download folder. You see there's still the Google Chrome hanging around from before, which you may delete at this point, or you may just want to keep it around. And here is a new package, which is the Anaconda installer. So we install that by simply double-clicking it, and you get an interactive installer that leads you through these steps. You need to accept the license agreement, obviously. Read that very carefully. In this case I will only install it for me, but normally you would want to install it for all users. I'm not going to do this because I already have an Anaconda installation here. As you've just noticed, sometimes this installer is a little bit stubborn, so it told me before when it came up install only for me wouldn't work, and I had to actually click on install on a specific disk and then again on install for me only before it accepted that. So it will do that now. And the installer goes through the usual motions to finish the installation. Speeding this up now a little bit. Validating the packages. writing lots of files into your file system. Down there it says about 8 minutes remaining. So I'm not showing all of this to you to bore you, but just to make sure that the process works for you exactly like it works for us in all its individual steps. So we're just about to finish the installation. As usual, the timing is not very reliable that the installer gives. The 8 minutes reduced to less than 1, but this 1 minute that's left, that's dragging out a bit. Now, alright, so we're finished. Close the installer. We may want to keep it if we have to install again on another platform, or move it to the trash. That doesn't really matter at this point. Let's close this window. And, well, where is it actually? Is it here? Is it in the dock? No, it isn't. But if you look in the applications window, you will find the Anaconda navigator there. So again, for convenience sake, I'll move this to the desktop as well, but you could obviously leave it there. Okay. So we finished the basic installation of Anaconda, and there's one final thing that we need to do for the installation, which is to get Plotly. And the way to do that is through a Jupyter Notebook. But before we can attempt that, we actually need to get the Resolve materials for algorithmic thinking. There are several ways to obtain them. You may have downloaded yours from the web. I have them on a USB stick here, so I'll mount that USB stick. Should appear in a second. There it is. Let's open that. And you see there's a distribution file here, which is a zip file. So I'll copy that zip file to the desktop. It's not the fastest of USB sticks, but we should be finished soon. And then, of course, given that the distribution is a zip file, I have to expand that, so I can simply do that by double-clicking. After that, if I want to, I can get rid of the zip file, and of course I can also unmount the USB stick. So this contains all our files in here. Let's have a quick look at the structure. The important section that we're going to look at now is the notebook section here, and in particular there's one notebook in here which is called Start Here, aptly enough, and that will help us to finish the distribution as well as to get started on the actual lessons. So what we do now is we start the Anaconda navigator. This may take a few seconds. Once we see the navigator window, we launch a notebook server. And you see this is the file chooser in the notebook server. That looks very much like your basic Finder window, if you will, or on Windows like a file explorer. So within that file list we find our distribution, and we had that on a desktop. So I click on desktop here. It was called Resolve Algorithmics. There we go. We're interested in the notebooks, and we start up that notebook that's called Start Here. The important thing is we have to start here.ipynb, IPython notebook. There's another file here which is automatically generated, which is called starthere.python, and that's not the one, that's not a notebook, that won't work. So we start this one here. I've already gone through the Plotly installation before, that never needs to be done again. So we just go to the table of contents and start lesson 1. And a normal end user would now read the notebook and evaluate the code cells one by one. We shall do that a little bit more fast-paced manner, just to see that everything is working. So here were the preliminaries. They seem to have run fine. They installed everything, configured the notebook. Go to the first section of code where something really happens. That was down here. We've just read in some external data that worked fine because it shows up here in this table. And now we test Plotly. Where it actually gives us a graph. And it does. Now this has taken a little bit longer before it came because I'm on a very slow network here. And this is an important point. You need to have a network connection. If you don't have a network connection when you go through this notebook, the graphs will all be blank because essentially data gets sent to the server and the plot gets sent back. So you need to have a network connection. If you don't have a network connection, these will stay blank. So that would be the first thing to check. But everything's worked fine for us, so we're good. There is a way to install Plotly completely for offline mode, but that's a somewhat more involved installation that you need to do to achieve that. And there's another video that explains that. Okay, that's it. Our installation has worked. A good point to start for the end user would be the videos on how to use Jupyter. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.